The trouble with saying it's okay to be white, of course, there's a article on this.
White nationalism or neo-Nazism isn't the same as saying it's okay to be white.
Everyone knows these days that it is not enough to simply be not racist. You have to actively be anti-racist. I didn't know what the that meant, so I had to look it up. Also, you might notice that there's no ads on this video because YouTube demonetized me yet again because they hate me. So if you want to go and support me and see other content that has never been posted on this YouTube channel or anywhere else, go to my locals page, ariel.locals.com. Go check that out after you watch this video. Let's get right into it. First two things that come up are anti-racism is a code word for anti-white. Second thing that comes up in a Google search is how to be anti-racist. You know what? We're gonna look at both of those because I have no clue what I'm doing with this video. But I do think it's interesting that already you can see the juxtaposition here of the two different sides of this argument. So this is the Smithsonian, by the way. So for those of you who don't know, it is a reliable source. I think it's a not-for-profit, government-owned series of museums and such across the country. They are the ones that wrote this article or posted this article. Being anti-racist. To create an equal society, we must commit to making unbiased choices and being anti-racist in all aspects of our lives. Okay, they still didn't say what it was, but let's see if they say here. Race does not biologically exist. So how can you be racist? Okay, I'm sure they're going to tell us. I'm sure they're going to tell us. Yet how we identify with race is so powerful, it influences our experiences, shapes our lives. In a society that privileges white people and whiteness, racist ideas are considered normal throughout media, culture, social systems, and institutions. Historically, racist views justified the unfair treatment of oppression of people of color. Yes, absolutely, in the past. I also looked this up on a number of different sites. Here is what I found. Being anti-racist is fighting against racism. Racism takes several forms of works, most often in tandem with at least one other form to reinforce racist ideas, behaviors, and policies. Types of racism are, we about to be educated. Okay, ready? Individual racism refers to the beliefs, attitudes, and actions of individuals that support or perpetuate racism. The U.S. cultural narrative about racism typically focuses on individual racism and fails to recognize systemic racism. Okay, so individual racism basically is like what most people think of when they hear the term racist. Like anyone can be racist. That's what most of us think, right? Interpersonal racism. Oh god, there's like 10 different types of racism. Maybe we can check all the boxes and be all the different types of racism. Interpersonal racism occurs between individuals. These are public expressions of racism, often involving slurs, biases, hateful words, or actions. Okay, I guess we could say that someone who is an individual racist might express themselves in a nasty way, and that's what interpersonal racism is. Interpersonal racism is kind of like a verb. Institutional racism. These are discriminatory treatments, unfair policies, or biased practices based on race that result in inequitable outcomes for whites over people of color, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the first two types of racism can be attributed to a person of any race, but the third type of racism can only affect people of color, right? Like, am I understanding that right so far? Just to make sure I'm following along. Structural racism is the overarching system of racial bias across institutions and society. These systems give privileges to white people, resulting in disadvantages to people of color. Example, stereotypes of people as criminals in mainstream movies or and media. Okay, so if people of color are being portrayed as bad guys in movies, and that's considered structural racism, does that mean it's structural homophobia when we see the constant, like, gay boy best friend in every movie? Like, and he's super effeminate and everything. All jokes aside, though, this has come from a government-funded website, and it's made its way into the educational system. It's getting a lot of praise and a lot of pushback.
I recently found an article written by a teacher who expressed the importance of critiquing the anti-racism ideology. He goes on to explain that while he originally supported Black Lives Matter, he's since become skeptical and no longer supports the movement. Anti-racism ideology is built on a specific premise. Racial disparities are the result of a white supremacist society. He goes on to write that his discomfort stemmed from observing the insidious authoritarian pressure in many education systems to make sure they are not deemed racist. In some of the workshops he's attended, the ideas ranged from creating more diversity committees to paying employees of color more money for the invisible work that they do. And by the way, I'm just quoting what he wrote. He goes on to state that the new trendy definition of racism, prejudice plus power, aggressively calls for revolutionary dismantling of institutional structures. What this new wave of anti-racism is teaching people is that if you're not actively fighting racism, you're condoning it. He makes a great point when he says that this is causing students to not speak out against ideas they disagree with in fear of being labeled a racist. The same goes for people who speak out against the new gender laws, like myself, being labeled transphobic, which is interesting to me because inflating labels for the sake of shutting down someone who disagrees with you is inevitably going to create more division and hate. Who wouldn't develop some type of resentment towards another human being after being accused of something so insidious?
Okay, this is a huge idea because all ideas should be critiqued and questioned, right? Nobody is above that. We've gotten to a point in society where if it is a black person or a trans person or a black trans disabled queer non-binary has one foot, we can't critique these people anymore. Anybody who is considered oppressed, we have to believe their narrative. Another quote from this awesome article: well-intentioned educators lack understanding in this ideology's origins. Anti-racism ideology is stemming from a kind of revised postmodernist philosophy, and from that, critical race theory. Postmodernists argue that there's no such thing as objective truth. Truth is merely a narrative held by the groups who hold the power in society. While postmodernism is a great literary lens in which to discuss different historical narratives, I am hoping that educators can see that this also brings with it dangerous consequences. And this is the most important sentence here. By objecting truth, we are now going to deny the scientific method. My favorite part of this article is when he talks about how, everybody in his teaching staff is so proud of being anti-racist, yet they make these new rules for young black men and women who are constantly late to class because, the stereotype is that black people can't be on time. How did we get here? I would say the same for the hashtag it's okay to be straight. I constantly see how many people are identifying as non-binary and queer and all these other genders when they are not same-sex attracted or experiencing gender dysphoria. Most of them are just dressing differently, want to express themselves differently, or in between the idea of masculine and feminine. In the grand scheme, is it okay to be straight? Yeah, obviously. Is it okay to be white? Yeah, obviously. Hello. These are all things that we cannot control and do not make us better or less of a person. But let's see what the far left has to say about this, shall we? The trouble with saying it's okay to be white. Of course, there's a fucking article on this. Okay, so a bunch of posters apparently were printed out and put on university campuses. He said the posters were a protest of racial discriminatory ideology taught at the university. He said many professors explicitly teach in their courses that it is not okay to be white. It's okay to be white appears to be a literal or denotive message, but when we read it in context against the backdrop of institutional Eurocentrism and current anti-racist political movements like Black Lives Matter, we can see that it is far from benign.
This is probably why there's been an uprise in things like hashtag it's okay to be white. Or can we just simply admit that it's freedom of speech and also freedom of interpretation? If you choose to interpret a simple statement such as all lives matter as a jab at black people, that's on you. But I don't think it's healthy to automatically assume simple statements are malintentioned unless you want to constantly view yourself as a victim. This should go without saying, but white nationalism or neo-Nazism isn't the same as saying it's okay to be white. Furthermore, I can't change the fact that I was born with this skin color, so it doesn't make me special in that regard. That said, if you find your skin color special enough to celebrate it, that's fine, you do you. But remember to keep that same energy, meaning if you're proud of your blackness, other people should be allowed to celebrate their color as well, including white people.
If we compare it to people saying that I'm proud to be gay, I don't think that's actually comparable. Obviously, we are saying we are proud to be gay, but what we actually mean when we say that, we are proud to be ourselves and living our truth openly. We are not proud of the simple fact that we exist and did not choose this. People don't need to come out as black or white in the same way you need to come out as LGBT. Well, at least some people. Some people are obvious. Consumer culture helps build rebels. Identity is a big part of branding campaigns, diffusing politics of new social movements into commercial demands for representation, inclusion, diversity, and tolerance. Obviously, like we know that already. Consumerism also preaches an ethnic of non-conformity. Nonconformists are never satisfied with the status quo, continually seeking new ways to subvert it. Here's the best part. Therefore, to be a rebel, to transgress and subvert the perceived status quo, is the dominant popular mode of identity. And if being anything other than being white, and cis and straight. People are gonna figure out how to do it because people are hating on cis, straight, white people these days. Now I think I understand how we got here. Let me know what you think though. I think it's obvious that we need to learn to separate intellectual conversations and activism, so I will leave you with this. Challenging a narrative is not racist. It is not transphobic. It is not sexist. It is not bigoted. All ideas should be critiqued. Thank you so much to my friend Vanessa Gothix for being in this video. Other than that, I will see you guys back here in a few days with a brand new video and over on my locals page. Until then, I love you, love yourselves. Bye, girl.